the meeting to order and announce that we have a quorum present. So, item number 2, community interest items. May 7th, general election, early voting dates and times. You can look, if you have the agenda with you, you can see those dates. They started yesterday, goes through this week, Saturday the 30th, and it Sunday, May 1st, Monday, May 2nd through the 3rd, and you can vote over at the Schoolhouse Road called Legacy Learning Center. So you can vote at the schoolhouse. Item number 3, we have to consider and act regarding the meeting minutes. So anybody have a motion on the meeting minutes from last meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented from last week.
All in favor, raise your hand. So it's unanimous, Shanna. Okay. Item 3B, we have to discuss and consider an act regarding approval of a site plan for 870 Trade Wind Drive, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Schwanke.
Yeah, Chairman Wallach and members of the commission, this is a tract where there's an existing building on it of approximately 30,000 square foot and 14,000 square foot of office, and 7,000 square foot of office, and they're wanting to add more dock space of another approximately 30,000 square feet and 14,000 square feet of a shop area. And if we can go to another slide, that is sort of distorted. There you go. You can you see the buildings on the west side. It's an extension of a long building, and then on the south side of the track, there's another long building, which is the shop area. They've provided additional parking with this that meets our standards, and the staff has reviewed it, and we're recommending that you forward it to the City Council with the recommendation of approval.
Very good. Is there any discussion? Anybody want to talk to it or again it or anything else? No discussion out there. How about either one of you guys? Any comments? Okay, so let's consider an action. One of you want to bring a motion? Dennis? Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, so that's approved. Consider an act of moving the scheduled May 24th Planning and Zoning Commission and Capital Improvements Advisory Committee meeting to May 31st. Anybody here going to talk to that?
I am.
You are.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Chair Kadesh did mention at the last meeting that the motion back earlier in 2021 was to meet on the last Tuesday of the month and not the 4th. So, Chair Kadesh, and we went back to the minutes, and that was what the motion was. The schedule was not on that. So, we decided that we would just make the motion for the next upcoming meeting, because the next time we would have an issue would be in August, and that would be after council had time to figure out their schedule. It's the day after Memorial Day, if that makes any difference to you.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the change in schedule.
All in favor? Okay, that passed unanimously. Executive session, do we have anything to do in executive session today?
No, sir.
Okay, so item number 5, we don't have any action. Item number 6, status of current development projects. Look at the PDF. Anybody have any questions on those? Or is there anybody in the audience that wants to talk about those? Looks like somebody's pretty busy out there, Mike. All right. Nothing else? Future agenda item number 7.
Hey, Chairman, there will be, well, I'll say potentially site plan that'll be coming forward if they resubmit with some corrections that we've asked for.
Anything else that we're aware of? Yeah, okay.
That's the only thing.
Just the one thing? Okay. All right, very good. So, then we're done through item number 7. We're going to vacate the bench here and turn it over to the mayor.
Yes,
Where
Mayor
is he?
Halsey is
There he
coming
is.
in and will be moving into training. I'm going to ask everybody to sit in the audience so that the mayor can face you all.
Very good. Okay, it went off. I'm sorry. I buggered it up. That's all right. I'm good. That'll work. Fine. Oh, that'll be good. All right, very good. No, I see. Well, thank you for bearing with us. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is our first workshop, one of many to come, and others besides myself will get people who are truly expert in the field, and we'll just build on this. But I thought it was important that we start off. I know I gave you a lot of materials suggested that you read prior to coming to the meeting. And this workshop, I'm just going to hit on a few items. I'm not going to keep you a long time. I want to respect your time. You got things to do. But there are a few topics that I want to hit on at a high level, and we will further explore those in coming workshops. It's about capital improvements. With our new subdivisions that are coming in. Right, there it is. Our industrial developments. They all need water improvements. And primarily, I want to say improvements. You know, we have lines out there that we use that are in existing use. So when we look at these capital improvement programs, these are upgrades, not to improve what we have, but to accommodate these new developments. And Mr. Anderson, he can expound on that a little bit more when we get into this. But again, water improvements, that's domestic water, drinking for fire. Likewise, wastewater improvements. These are big lines. They're not cheap. And especially, I guess, in the last many months or a couple of years, they've really gone up, escalated in price. So, P&Z is our Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. That's one of your additional duties. And these are the advisory committee functions taken directly out of the local government, which local government code, which coincides with our ordinance. And in fact, every biannually, you issue a report to the city council, and it cites these very things at the very top. Land use assumptions. You advise and assist in adopting land use plan. Capital improvement plan. You review regarding the water and wastewater capital improvements, and you file these written comments in these biannual reports. And every 10 years, we'll get a new capital improvement plan. That's required by state statute. On top of that, one of your tasks is to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the capital improvement plan and advise the city council. And I put in the governing body more specifically. You're advising the governing body of the need to update or revise the land use assumptions, the capital improvement plan, and our impact fee. And again, semi-annually, you have a report on the progress evaluation. How are we doing in achieving our capital improvement plan? How are we doing, and also identify problems that in implementing the plan or in administering the impact fees. And the next couple slides will touch on this. Achieving the capital improvement plan. Currently we have a list, I don't know, I'm going to guess around, I haven't counted them, but maybe 20 items or more of capital improvement plan. All told, everything summed up around $32 million. And all of which needs to be in the ground within about the next 5-6 years functioning. As these subdivisions and industrial developments, all development within our city comes on. Yes, within that subdivision, the developer installs that piping, sizes that piping for their subdivision. It services their subdivision. Likewise, an industrial facility, they size that piping, water and wastewater, to serve that building. We have to connect each one of those throughout the city and transfer that water that will serve all of them when they have need of it, both water and wastewater. And that's really that's the focus of, that's what our capital improvement is. We have, how do we garner the funds to pay for this? One is our impact fees, and the other is taking into account ad valorem, because we can't charge 100% of this. Our next slide. Now, this is a report. Now, we're going to get into the report itself, and these are as of March 31st, 2021, is a report that City Council received. And there at the bottom, you'll see 25,784,000 and 9,836,000 is eligible cost. Eligible cost is that portion of which we can expend impact fees on, that amount. Total cost of it, 25,754,000. And I got a couple of them, and looking at this, something's going. Okay, I highlighted a couple of these, and it stuck out at me. And it says, construct 2,300 linear feet of new 60-inch water line. Over in the remarks, it's developer funded. Likewise, and so this has been zeroed out under cost and eligible cost. Likewise, I got this construct 950 linear feet of 16-inch water line. I got developer funded, but yet, that would be for a anticipated upsize. So this is March 31st, 2021. Six months later, we get a new report. September 30, 2021. These are the same highlighted projects. But yet, now I've got $907,000 in project cost. $326,000 that's eligible from impact fee. And I got an estimated completion to be determined. But yet, and likewise down here, this upsizing, we still have the same dollar values, 47,000, almost 17,000 for eligible costs, but yet it's to be determined. But on that previous one, 6 months prior, it said it was developer funded. And I'm trying to understand. So, what I did, this being the most recent one that we had, I asked our city engineer, okay, I want you to evaluate all of it. And it's hard for us as a city and for you to plan when these need to be in the ground with a to be determined on. It's how we're going to rank them and look ahead in the coming year or 2 years or 3 years or 4, in this case, 6, 8 years. How are we going to fund all? Because our impact fees certainly aren't going to cover this cost. Here is that ranking that I'll say, we put dates in. We, and it's not me, our city engineer did. And these are not in the same order as these previous projects. But for the last 6 months, our city engineer has been reviewing our capital improvement plan with regard to the assessment of it. What were the assumptions that drove the size of these lots? Some of them are very big. And when do they need to be in the ground? Because that's at the, you see at the bottom down here, got 28,543,000 and 12,408,000. Some of those is over $30 million. So we have to, and the impact fees aren't really coming close to funding all the projects. So we have to plan within our general fund. How are we going to pay them? And according to ranking here, and we got, 5 of them that need to be in the ground in 2022 functioning. We have 2023 and 2024, and we see it goes out to 2028. That helps us plan for these, our budget for that, which will impact everybody in the city. So let me go to impact fee. In a minute, I'm going to tie all these together. This was a report put out in December for the city council. This was at city council meeting, December 10th, 2018. And what I want to focus on is this highlighted number down here. $2,292 was the current impact fee at that time. And up here it states by state law, the maximum impact fee that can be charged is the total amount recoverable minus utility service revenues or ad valorem taxes dedicated to capital improvements divided by the expected number of new service units. Mike will touch on what the service units are. And this is page 2 of that report. It says, alternately, in lieu of funding and a funding cap on capital projects, a 50% credit can be applied to the eligible capital improvement cost. And here is $1,821, a new calculation based on this, our new capital improvement plan. And this recommended that we keep in place this $2,292 in lieu of the more recent calculation of $1,821. Here is out of the subdivision regulation, the impact fees, fees per service unit, and you've heard of MUE. What that is. This is a very long-winded explanation of how this is calculated. I kind of drive for simplicity, but nonetheless, and looking at the local government code about the calculation of impact fees, it would be based on your current plan. And you choose a particular method, but our ordinance is saying we're going to have this particular method. And what happened, the council was advised, keep the higher fee, which was an older calculated number, in lieu of the current calculation of 21. And we are digging into the bottom of that, trying to explain the rationale behind it, and if that's even permissible to do. So I'm going to drive this back to the CIAC. You as the committee, the advisory committee, have to understand this yourself. So when you have have an engineer come to you. Of course, they're going to generate all these numbers and present it to you, and you're going to review it. There is the time. There's when you as members drill down into it. Quiz that engineer. Explain to me. Study the local government code. Study our ordinance. Does this line up? You are our advisory committee, and we have a lot of reliance upon you to do that. Here is, now these are parts and pieces. I'm showing parts and pieces. Now earlier in here, it talked about land use plan. Here is, I'm sorry that chair is in the way. Can you move that chair out of the way? Here's our zoning map. This is what currently, well, I'll say currently, there are some updates that are not reflected here, but for all intents and purposes, this is fairly correct. That how the land here in Haslett is currently zoned. Here is what we call the future land use map. This is, well, you know, if we had our druthers and got to change everything, this is our future land use. Here's what we'd like to happen. I'm going to start out with, our ordinance does not recognize future land use map. Nowhere in our ordinance does it say anything about a future land use map. There's two types of maps it does. One is land use map, and the other is the master land use map, or land use plan and master land use plan. What's the difference of those two? The master land use plan is a reflection of what we would like to have happen. Say we got a piece of agricultural property in the either in our city limits, or we have our ETJ. Nothing is applied to it; it's ag by just default, and we can say, well, you know, when that comes into the city, we would like to have that be, I don't know, general commercial. Or this piece over here, we'd like to have medium density residential. Whatever the case may be. Now, so that's the master land use plan. The land use plan is that master land use plan, but very specifically for you, that's used in the calculation and consideration when you come up with and recommend impact fees. And your master land use, or a master water plan and master sewer plan. And that's what all the impact fees are based on. But let's go back a little bit. There are differences between this zoning map and this land use plan, this future land use plan. There we go. Where's my cursor at? I'm going to give you an example. Right up here in the far left, MFR. MFR is, again, what is that? Multifamily residential. Is that multifamily? Where's my glasses? All right, good. Forgive me. I'm over 40. Yeah, multifamily residential. Oh, well, looky here. It's currently zoned as industrial. Now, if you recall, several months back, I kind of tested the water about this kind of issue. is down here we have a general commercial. And right here, it says mixed use. They're a little different. So I proposed rezoning this. Well, that didn't happen, but let's look ahead. What would happen if you rezoned it? Let's look at this up in the top left-hand corner of the map, the industrial area. There are folks that own that property, developers. But we're saying, you know what? We want it to be multifamily residential. Herein lies the problem. One, the only way you would get multifamily residential is to go up here and rezone that as multifamily residential. In fact, nothing on this current zoning map has been rezoned to reflect anything in this future land use plan. And there's a very good reason why. If we did rezone that to multifamily residential, that landowner would have us in court in a heartbeat. It's called a taking. We devalued their property. Now, the price in that property difference might be, this is running $4 a square foot, industrial. Multifamily residential, they would do well to pay $1 or $1 shy of $1.25 a foot. That's a big difference. You know who would pay that difference? The city of Haslett would. And it would be a case that we could not get out of. We would pay that difference, which would be about $2.75 a foot, and walk away with nothing. And it would go back to industrial. So for us to go and ignore our current zoning is not really the best thing to do. So a proper land use plan would reflect, here's the current zoning that we have. And in these areas here where you see, excuse me, I'm trying to get this mouse to show up. All right, bear with me. I hear I'll authorize to spend $50 to get a couple and new batteries. All right, here I thought I saw it. Well, doggone it. There it is. Okay, you see right here in the middle it says ag. Well, we know that's not ag anymore. That's called sweetgrass. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's say it's ag. And then we have another little piece of ag right here. And over here on the left. And that's not all ag anymore either. And then we have our ETJ. So, and over here on the right, we have ag. Well, I present to you, those are the only areas up for you to impose any future land use that you might want and define it. I'm going to scroll. Here we go. Oh, darn it. Can you hit your escape key for me? There we go. Okay, I think that's what was wrong. All right, so in those ag areas, say the top left, okay, well, will we put ITR, and ITR is in-town residential. Well, that's fine. You're not going to have to rezone anything. Well, you may well today, because that zoning map's not up to date according to 2021. But let's say it was, then you putting on there the in-town residential would be just fine. And what happens? Someone buys that, they want to do a development. Well, I'd like to put in warehouses, and you go, no, I'm sorry, we don't want any more warehouses. You can build in-town residential there. And, well, I don't want to build in-town residential. Well, you could consider rezoning. That's up to planning and zoning. But are you grasping this aspect of the dilemma? We have a future land use plan that's defining uses contrary to what it's already zoned for. And unless you're ready to pay the price, and I'm talking about real money, big money, and court costs and attorneys, chances are that's not going to happen. They're not willing to do it. I'm quite confident to say the city council. So I have asked Mr. Swanky, our planning director, to develop new map, a new, right now, just for the sake of what you're used to hearing, is a future land use map. But at the same time, we're going to rename it according to our ordinance. It's called a master land use plan. And likewise, you will have a land use plan when you do your work. And that new master land use plan will give respect to our current zoning. And in those areas that have not been defined, such as in the agricultural areas within our corporate limits and our extraterritorial jurisdiction outside our corporate limits, there is where you can make those recommendations to change that use for the future. And why is that important? Well, let's back up to, we can use these comparatively, to the calculation of these MUEs. MUE stands for, again, what is that, Mr. Anderson? Meter unit equivalency. It's a base unit, and of course, say a 1,000 unit apartment complex is is going to have a lot more of those than, say, a single family residential unit, as you can imagine. And the assumptions, and this type of map, which in the future will be called your land use plan, the engineer looks at that, oh, we got this kind of stuff here. Up here was envisioned a 1,000 unit apartment complex. That was used in the calculation. Now, you can imagine if you use the wrong assumptions, or assumptions that are not valid, assumptions that you're not willing to pay to change from industrial to a multifamily residential for an apartment complex, that drives that water flow rate up thousands of gallons per minute. It drives the sewer line size up. That drives our capital cost up. So the land use assumption is a foundation for these calculations. And we have to be careful about that. That's one of your oversights. Go up to the very top here. Bottom line, is to advise the city, the governing body, of the need to update or revise our land use assumption, which is the foundation to our capital improvement plan and thus our impact fee. So you see how it's all kind of come together and affect that? I'll say this. In City Hall for the last, I'll say 11 months, my greatest priority was to implement quality control and quality assurance. They're two different topics. But without that, we don't know what we have. And it takes multiple sets of eyes on this stuff. But those eyes being knowledgeable of what we have to do, what we're trying to accomplish to get a quality product. And that's where, again, we rely on you for that. And I'm an engineer. My career is engineering. And I always maintained my client or other fellow engineers or whoever I'm serving, I've always acknowledged and welcomed, challenged me. I should have a reason for what I did, and I should be able to explain it quick. If I can't explain it simply to you, then I don't understand what I did. If it takes a big long paragraph sound to explain what this is, and I read it 10 times if I've read it at all, and I'm still shaking my head, then something's disconnected. You members need to have a thorough understanding. Mr. Anderson can do it. Use him. Question him. Because he'll be bringing new ones to you in the future. He's at your service, thus the city council service, thus the service of every taxpayer in the city of Athens. This is a big deal. They are, Mr. Wanky is redefining our master land use plan, which was, we're going to say, it was called the future land use plan. Mr. Anderson and his associates are reanalyzing our entire system to confirm all of this and give us the correct sizing, to confirm the sizing. For one, is it needed or not needed? And when is it needed? That's very important for us planning our budgets going into the future. I have done, if you listen to the city council meeting in the last meeting, I just at the end of towards the end of the meeting, one of those items was just a high-level view of our capital improvement needs and cost over for the next 5 years, 6 years. And it totaled $55 million. None of this was ever accounted for. I mean, it was known, but there was no financial plan put together. And that's what we use all this for. This is what we'll base our financial plan. This will be a foundation piece of it going forward. And I think I'd probably be run out of town on a rail if I came to you next year and go, well, I got to jack up the property taxes to get up $55 million. I don't think that'd work. No, it won't work. So we're actually to help accommodate this infrastructure that we are obligated to put in. Is we are doing a very detailed budget currently out to 2030. It incorporates, we have the takedown schedules for these residential developers is how many homes per quarter do you anticipate you're going to build. We incorporate the ad valorem, impact fee, the water cell. We also account for employee growth. You know, in 6 years, we're going to be at a population of 8,000, 8,500, maybe even 9,000 people. Depends on how many children per household there is. And then we can project out and model that. Of course, we'll get financial advisors involved to how to structure this stuff. But this is a very important key piece of that. And all of that $55 million that I mentioned is all capital improvement. Now, what's included in that number that's not in here, which we will address, you're able to put in roadway projects in these capital improvement plans according to the local government code. We don't have it. I don't know why. I have a lot of questions right now that I'm on the quest to get answered and understand myself. So going forward, all of this is being reviewed currently, and we will have a plan going forward, and you will be involved, very much so. But we need people that have familiarity and knowledge and familiarity with the law, and that law defines how we do this and what can we include in these impact or capital improvement plans. How do we calculate these fees? And then also our ordinance. It's always good when you have an ordinance, whether it's in planning and zoning topics or capital improvement topics, is that you read our ordinance and you read the state statute. Do they always agree? Most of the time, but you need to know where the difference is and understand that difference and whether that difference is valid or not. So ask questions, be inquisitive, and try to understand the topic. And all of us are here to serve you. My job is to facilitate your work. That's the best thing I can do. I don't do all the work. It's volunteers like you, our committee, our staff, all these folks. I focus on facilitating their work. They're the ones that get it done. And we have, to my satisfaction, all our staff, all our consultants are top-notch. They can explain to you easily what the topic is because they have that level of understanding. So I'm going to stop there. Is there any questions? But we can get Mr. Anderson and Mr. Swanky up here to just address, maybe impact fees and pipe sizing, all that plays together. And they actually come together in the development of this stuff where that land use plan and engineering assumption marry and result in these recommendations to you. So I'm sorry. The last time we have, oh no, you put out an update every 6 months. The impact fees are, well, historically been calculated. Go ahead, Mike. Let's do it. Come on up. You issue a report. Oh, you're talking about the calculation of the impact fee?
Your water impact fee was last calculated and updated in 2018. Statutorily, according to local government code, you're required to look at it every 5 years. Yes, ma'am. And if you'll recall, your sewer impact fee was prepared during 2020. I believe it was adopted in December of 2021. So you're a little off. They really need to sync up together in order for this to kind of be an effective process. So my name's Mike Anderson. I'm with Belcheff and Associates. We're the city engineer for Haslett. We were city engineer here from about 1999 until about 2016. We took a little vacation, and now we're back. And the mayor spoke to some of the things that he's tasked us with. He actually called me Friday morning and said, hey, I need this, this, and this. I need you to be here Monday morning to talk about this and be ready to go Tuesday night. So I don't have a presentation, but I'm going to wing it, and we're always ready to assist and provide input. So here's my presentation right here. My goal is to be succinct and to be able to answer your questions in a way that makes sense to everybody, because I realize not everybody in this room is an engineer. My goal is to make sure this all makes sense. The mayor did a very good job outlining the committee's function and an overview of the process for calculating and updating impact fees, and I just want to hit on a couple of highlights real quick. Some of this may be a little bit regurgitated, but feel free during any time if you have any questions to stop me, and I'll do my best to answer those. The gist of the impact fees, the foundation of them are your land use assumptions and your land use plan. Those are used by us to determine the master water and sewer project. What does the city need to look like when it grows up? When you're completely built out and everything's developed and all the pipes in the ground, we need to make sure that those pipes are of adequate size to provide capacity for the folks that are living here, provide domestic service, fire protection, and to convey that wastewater to your wholesale provider, which is the TRA. From your land use plan and your land use assumptions, that's how you determine your population projections that are used to capture the growth during a 10-year planning period. That's the fundamental basis for an impact fee. We have a 10-year window, and it's our job we got a little magic ball in our office, and we just rub it, and it says this is how many people is going to come in 10 years. That's not what we do, but that's basically what we do, right? So we take our best estimate using population trends, known developments, and we try to forecast that 10-year planning period and the number of folks that are going to come in. And then that goes back to that MUE, the meter unit equivalency. And so for a single family residence, anyone buying any of these new houses out here, you walk out in their yard, most probably they've got a 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter. And that's defined by the AWWA as a unit equivalency of 1. So as you go bigger, 3/4 by 3/4, 1 inch, 2 inch, that table, I think the mayor had it in here, and I'm winging it. Bear with me here. Look at that. He even had the right table in here. He knew I was coming. So you look over, you might be able to see it easier on that screen there. On the left-hand side, you got meter size, and then on the right-hand side, you got meter unit equivalency factor. And that's determined and adopted by the AWWA. They basically set all the standards for public drinking and fire protection design in the United States. You can see it's kind of an exponential curve. Meter size goes up, the unit equivalency goes up exponentially. I used to know how to do the equation in college, but I don't anymore. I don't have to. We have tables for that, right? So, all that being said, those are all the required assumptions. That going through and developing a water system model or a sewer system model to determine how big the pipes need to be, that's really pretty straightforward. The hard part's getting everybody on board with what do you guys want to look like when you grow up and you build out. And that's where you all as a committee have a great impact on the fee and the calculation and the process by concurring and having your input on the development and adoption of a land use plan. And so once we agree on the land use plan, we go through and we update the water and sewer master plan. We determine the population projections. We determine our number of MUEs. We then take a look and we say, okay, based on this planning period, this 10-year planning period, what facilities need to be in the ground to support that growth, to support those assumptions that were developed and concurred on by the city council and you all. And what we do is we have to take those costs, those projects, and I'm going to use your existing. Oh man. Back to play. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this one's a little bit bigger. So what we do is we do cost estimates. So we go through and we try to list everything we can based on the project we know without doing any design. But if I ask you how much that truck's going to cost out there, what truck? Is it that brand new 2021 Ram, or is it that 1988 F-250 that's got 450,000 miles? Well, if it's the Ram, I know that if it's a Laramie edition or Tradesman edition, I can probably get in the ballpark a little bit closer. Same thing with our cost estimates. The more we know, the more time we put into the cost estimates, the better forecast of that project cost. That project cost also has to include soft costs like easement acquisition, survey, design, permitting, construction administration, et cetera. So the total eligible project cost, soft cost included, you're then able to include the carrying cost or the interest cost for those projects. The trick is trying to capture the what's labeled as the eligible cost, which would be that component or that amount of cost attributed to the growth out of that line, or portion of that line required to support the growth during that 10-year planning period. So we do all that, and then the actual impact fee calculation is really easy. You take your 10-year capital improvement costs, you sum all those up. You got to give the developers and everybody a 50% credit. So right off the bat, you're losing the ability to capture 50% of that cost. That's state statute. You have to do that. And then you just divide that by the MUEs. So you have a numerator and a denominator, right? And so the higher the denominator, the lower the fee, right? Higher the numerator, the higher the fee. So some of the things that we've noticed, we were brought into the fold back in July, I believe, of last year. And so as we've gone through and we've kind of got up to speed and we've been given certain tasks, some of the things we noticed early on when we were reviewing some of these developments were that there were some assumptions in the water master plan that we weren't quite sure how accurate those were. There's some assumptions in there regarding fire flow and the ability for the system to provide 6,000 gallons a minute fire flow in these industrial areas. The population projections, we're saying that when the city grows up, there'd be 15,000 people living here. And so we started to kind of look into that a little bit because, the fundamental basics of the calculation are predicated on these assumptions. So what we noticed was that it doesn't appear that the land use assumptions were taken into account zoning, and the mayor spoke to that earlier. But I want to kind of give you an example that will kind of wrap all this into one neat little example. So what we have here is we've got the existing zoning map, and this is what we're going to call the Nance property. And this is one of the few, if you think about it, remaining undeveloped properties in the city that doesn't have a plan on it, right? If you look at this zoning map right here, and the mayor talked about the entitlements that are already on this property, namely that industrial zone portion up top. But what he didn't speak to is there's also gas wells on that property too. And as you know, there's setback requirements that the city has for proximity to gas wells, et cetera. So then you go to your land use plan, and again, the mayor spoke to the multifamily. So we did a quick calculation just as an example. I don't know the acreage of that, but we used on an example of 25 acres. 25 acres, if we had 1,000 units on that, or we had 25 acres of half-acre residential, the difference is 50 gallons a minute to 600 gallons a minute just on the domestic side. Fire flow is a little bit different, but the domestic water use and consumption directly correlates to the amount of sewer that those folks produce, right? So we're trying to sort out the additional where these additional people going to move into and take into account. But if you start looking at this future land use plan, it would appear that some of these areas that already have existing zoning were converted to match what's on your land use plan, not taking into account existing zoning or other setbacks due to gas wells, et cetera. You kind of have the same thing going on through here. You got some areas that are zoned industrial that are in town residential or mixed MDR, medium density residential. Well, those properties already have zoning on them, right? So one of the first things we need to do to move forward is review and refine the land use plan that Mr. Swanky's in the process of preparing. So I think the path forward is to get that draft plan developed and everybody begin to work through that and think through that. And as the mayor alluded to, that we need more than one set of eyes. I've got 5 other gentlemen in my office, and 2 of them are much better at this than I am, and that's why they're the ones that crank out the hard work. But they'll also spend 2 hours talking to you about it too, so that's why they sent me. But first thing we got to do is we got to get these land use assumptions squared away. And then we need to review and concur with the population projections that we'll extrapolate out of those, right? And see if we can't figure out if we've got, 450 acres of net developable property, and you say we want it to look like this, well, then it makes our job pretty easy to say, okay, when it's all built out, if it's built in accordance with this plan, this is what it'll look like. We're not saying that everything in here is wrong. We're just saying that these assumptions and the projects that have fallen out of it need to be looked at, right? Yes, sir. That's correct. I wouldn't say that would go away. I think the comprehensive plan, was that the one that was started in 16, 17?
Let me get rid of it. This is way before that.
There you go.
if you look at some of the documents that you've seen tonight, you've seen the zoning map, you've seen the comprehensive plan map, there's some elements that are missing that are very important that shape the city of Hazlet. If you look at the comprehensive plan, there's no thoroughfare plan that's overlaid on that. And we know that the thoroughfares have changed, which have a significant impact on the land use, whether it's Hazlet Parkway. If you look at the land use plan, it looks like it's future land use plan, it's not even addressed. And then there's the flyover. That's going to impact land use also. And that's going to be a significant element. And there's some thoroughfares that need to be rearranged to make traffic move easier. But all these things will be taken into effect, and it'll also, as we coordinate with the zoning, it'll bring it into a plan that's not just a pretty picture on the wall, but it's functional. And that's what the goal of this is. And then Mr. Anderson can use that for his land use assumption, because it'll have areas that are going to be strictly one thing or another thing, instead of being cut up or not even addressed with some of the underlying things that we have. And so it's an important document. It becomes the framework. It becomes the roadmap to the future. And now with that roadmap to the future, after we get it developed, we just have the instrument and the tools through the capital improvement plan to bring it through fruition. And that's one of the major tools that in the planning field that you have. You have the capital improvement plan, you have zoning and subdivision rules and regulations. Those are the tools that you have to bring those things into reality. So that's really the goal of it, is right now when you look at the, like I say, the future land use plan, it does not reflect any of those things I've just mentioned. It doesn't reflect thoroughfares, and you have to do that, because a lot of things are based upon. You know, some people say, which comes first, the land use or the thoroughfares? But when you got thoroughfares that are proposed and existing, you have to marry the two together. And right now, your documents do not do that. What's it? Right. Well, I was talking to a gentleman out here before the meeting. He wanted to meet because he has some land that he's looking at purchasing. In fact, they've already put a contract on it in the area that's zoned AG. And what he's showing there is not what I think is going to have happen. So it's one of those things that it's very important, especially now, as fast as things are moving in Hazlet. We get calls every day, people wanting to know they can use their property for. And I don't think we have the appropriate tool right now to do that. And it not only does it help developers, but it helps the city as it is the roadmap to the future. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The way you look at that a lot.
You want to take a minute, put city into oh, there's a word for council. Here, talking about it all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Like, as the mayor mentioned, there are basically two areas that are going to be specifically addressed with different types of land uses, and that would be your agricultural zoning, which is considered a temporary holding zone, and then the ETJ, which there is no zoning. So those two are fair game. I just want to mention a couple things too. The future land use plan is sort of like a policy. This is what we want to do, but the zoning ordinance is the law. And if you look at the zoning map, and it's not on this one, it will be on your future one, and it says this comprehensive plan or master land use plan does not constitute zoning. And it's required in state law that you actually put it on the map. And right now it's not over there on that. Well, absolutely. I take all kinds of things into consideration.
Planning and Zoning Commission meeting adjourned at 8:01 PM.